Yo, what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. Today's video, we're going to be doing a Graves guide for Season 10. So this guide is going to be designed for if you're new to Graves or new to jungling, or maybe you've been playing for a while and you just want to optimize your gameplay for Season 10 on Graves, and this video will give you exactly what you need. So this video is really beginner friendly and is a lot of just an overview on all the skills that you'll need to be able to be successful on Graves in Season 10. So with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Okay, first things first, we're going to jump into the runes. But right before we do that, I just want to address something really quickly. I've been getting a lot of complaints for my gameplay in the background, me constantly pressing tab. So my solution to that is I'm no longer going to be using my gameplay in there. I'm just going to use Korean Challenger gameplay in the background, mainly because it's exactly what that is. It's just background gameplay, and I really don't want to distract from the video. The thing that's most important is what I'm talking about and the pictures that I throw up on the screen to represent what I'm talking about. If you want to look at the gameplay in the background, that's awesome, but the main important thing is what I'm talking about here. So I'm just going to eliminate using my gameplay anymore because I know that me constantly pressing tab is pretty distracting. So anyways, let's get right into the runes. So the rune setup I have pulled up on the screen is the Fleet Footwork setup, which is one of the styles of playing Graves. So Graves, let me just say, he's in a very weird spot, and what I mean by that is there's actually 4 different play patterns that you can play on Graves that are actually pretty acceptable. Some more consistent than others, especially for new players. Some are more consistent than others, but there's really 3 really solid play patterns that you can play, and there's 4 that are, semi-meta that you can play. So the one I have pulled up on the screen is the rune setup that's going to be more of the brawler style Graves setup I have pulled right here. But alternatively, you could just take burst style runes where you take electrocute and stuff like that and go the lethality build. And we're going to talk about that in this video, but I'm going to save that part where we're going to be talking about lethality setup. I'm going to save that for whenever we talk about items. So let's just talk about what we have pulled up. So what we have pulled up is the Fleet Footwork setup. So this is with the Brawler Graves build. Alternatively, you can take Conqueror. It does work on Graves. It is okay. It is fine. I've just always favored the Fleet Footwork build, and most of the pros do as well. Just helps you kind of get in and get out a little bit easier. Especially helps out with your ganks. Just that little bit of movement speed, and then that upfront healing whenever you're in fights does feel very nice. But if you want to take Conqueror for that more up-in-your-face brawler style build, that's okay. Okay, cool. So there we have the Keystone. All right, after that, the runes aren't really that crazy important on Graves. Graves, as I said, Graves is in a weird spot. But secondary, we have our Triumph, but you could just take Overheal if you want to build some early healing into the game and synergize a little bit with your Fleet Footwork. Overheal is fine as well. Just don't take Presence of Mind. On the third row, honestly, any of those runes are fine. Most of the time, I favor taking Bloodline. Bloodline because you do build a lot of AD, so having that passive lifesteal is going to feel nice and synergize well with your Fleet Footwork. But you could just take Alacrity. It does increase your reload speed a little bit quicker. So it does increase your reload speed. Tenacity is fine as well. Just have a ton of CC. Most of the time I don't take Tenacity on Graves, but honestly any of those 3 are fine. Just depends on your preference and what you want. So Alacrity will increase your reload speed, and Bloodline will just make you a little bit more sustainable and feel a little bit more brawly. It does make your kit feel a little bit more clunky if you don't take the Alacrity setup. Okay, bottom row we're going to take Coup de Grace. That's pretty standard what you're going to be taking on Graves. If you want to take the full healing build, which I really don't recommend taking the entire full healing build, then you can do like some last stand shenanigans, but Coup de Grace is going to be your best bet. Okay, secondary runes, honestly guys, you can take anything but Resolve. Let's just be real. You can take anything but Resolve. What I have on the screen is the Inspiration setup, which is good on almost every single jungler to take secondary, with some exceptions. But the reason why this is so good is because as Graves and as most junglers should be involved in a lot of fights, so you can get your magical boots super early into the game. And then secondary after that, you would just take your reduced cooldown or the additional cooldown reduction with Cosmic Insight. But again, guys, you could take Domination if you wanted to. So you could take Domination and take something like Sudden Impact or one of the middle trees, and Ravenous Hunter would be fine as well. Like that's perfectly acceptable to go that build. Or you could take Sorcery and take like Water Walking, Nimbus Cloak or something because that's super fun. Or you could take Presence of Mind and stuff like that. So, or not Presence of Mind. Shoot. Absolute Focus. I always get that messed up. So, you could take Absolute Focus if you wanted to, and that'd be fine as well. After that, the stat runes, pretty standard jungle stat runes. We're going to take our attack speed with the adaptive damage and the armor at the bottom. Remember, you can swap that out for MR runes if you really want to, if there's a lot of AP threats on the enemy team. But, if there's 4 AP threats on the enemy team, maybe you shouldn't be playing Graves in the first place. But armor is going to be pretty standard, and that's going to be nice right there. All right, here we are at items. As I said at the beginning of the video, Graves is in a weird spot, meaning that he has a lot of different play patterns. We're going to talk about all 3 of the main ones in this part of the video right here. If you go crit Graves, we're not going to talk much about crit Graves, but if you already have a build path you love, why are you watching this video? So we're not really going to talk much about crit Graves. I do have the items pulled up, and we're not going to talk too much about that. Main thing we're going to talk about is the Brawl style build, which is actually my favorite way to play Graves, and the most consistent way to play Graves is the Brawl style build. The Brawl snowballing build, so has some additional snowballing items at the beginning, a little bit upfront burst. That's a very great way to play Graves. I love playing Graves that way. That shit's fun. And then we also have kind of like assassin burst Graves, which is also a very good way to play and a very meta and very playable. But it's the more difficult of the 3 to play. So if you're very new to Graves, I would not recommend going the lethality setup right off the bat, because you do have to be able to kind of execute the combos that Graves does pretty cleanly, or you'll find yourself just in really bad situations, up in someone's face, you miss your combo, and then you die. So if you're very new to Graves, I do not recommend going the upfront burst lethality build. I recommend trying out one of the brawler builds first before you do the other stuff. That's why we talked about the brawler rune setup. Okay, so the core items, that's why the core items look so weird here. I just have boots pulled up there. Because with the lethality setup, sometimes you can skip the jungle item. That's okay. I don't necessarily recommend doing that because not having the cooldown reduction, especially if you want to go the Sanguine Blade early on, does feel a little bit weird. But let's just talk about the boots. So Zerkers are always great on Graves. No matter what setup you're going, Zerkers are going to be great, increases your reload speed and all that good stuff. If you want to take one of the defensive boots options, that's fine as well. That's perfectly acceptable to take one of the defensive boots, but most of the time you'll be taking these Zerkers. Okay, let's talk about solid items. So right here, I'm just going to talk about the items we'll do for Graves, and then I'll actually go through the build paths in just a minute after we finish situational items. So just hold on there. Okay, so we have the 2 warrior enchantments. So you'll go warrior enchantment most builds. Even on the full lethality build, it's most of the time a good idea to just go ahead and start with that, but sometimes you can't skip it. We'll talk about that in a minute. So we have Red Smite and Blue Smite. Blue Smite just, helps a little bit with your chase down. I take Red Smite, and I recommend people take Red Smite 99% of the time if they're going to be taking a jungle item. So 99% of the time, Red Smite's going to be your best bet. You're up in people's faces all the time. Graves is a great duelist, especially against other AD champions. You stack up your True Grit and all that good stuff, and you'll be in a good spot. So Red Smite is very great on him, and then Blue Smite is, helps with your chase down a little bit, helps with your ganks, but most of the time take Red Smite. All right, and then we have our Phantom Dancers. So Phantom Dancer synergizes super well with Graves Kit, and that we'll talk about in a little bit. So it gives you that little bit of extra crit, which, randomly if it crits, it'll give you that big burst on your auto attack, which is part of Graves' passive. It'll shoot additional bullets. So it gives you a little bit of burst right there. And then the shield is very nice, very, very nice on Graves, especially since you're going to be up in people's faces all of the time. So everything around Phantom Dancer synergizes really well with Graves Kit, and it's one of his best items. After that, we have the Infinity Edge. This is only going to be on the crit build, or sometimes you can build it last item on the brawler, the more snowbally brawler build. You can build it last item if you really want to, if you just want the extra damage and you don't want the extra defensiveness that you're going to get from something like a GA or something like that. Then you can build that. As I said before, it'll synergize with your passive. It'll give you additional bullets. And you want to build this with your Phantom Dancer, and it'll do some pretty big stuff. All right, we have Storm Razor. Storm Razor is going to be your first item on the Snowball Brawler build. So it's going to be your first item, and old Storm Razor, like old Storm Razor, right when this item came out, was so broken on Graves and made Graves a monster, and this one is a lot like this one, because now it gives you crit chance. And so if you build this and then your Phantom Dancer, it starts to give you a little bit of power. So and it helps with your chase down, applies that short slow. And so it synergizes really well with Graves Kit. After that, we have the mostly lethality items. So we have Dustblade. This is just purely for the lethality build. We have Dustblade, Edge of Night. For whatever reason, I forgot to put Ghostblade on here, but Ghostblade is probably his best lethality item. Ghostblade should be on here. And then Sanguine Blade. I'm gonna keep putting Sanguine Blade on these guides, but I'm fairly certain that it's going to get nerfed sometime in this season. So, but we have Sanguine Blade on here, which is an item that you can build very first in the game and skip your jungle item. It's very weird to do that. It makes everything feel different. Like the game moves so much faster. Like you can clear your jungle so much faster. Your 1v1s are super amazing, and Graves ends up being in a lot of 1v1s in the early game. The bad thing that it does is it makes it where you don't have a lot of cooldown reduction early in the game, and that can feel kind of weird. So just know that. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay, we have the Death Dance. So a lot of time on the Brawler setup, you go, and on the Snowball Brawler setup, you'll go Double Dance, which is Phantom Dancer and Death's Dance. Phantom Dancer is super cheap, and then after you have Death's Dance, it just gives you so much ability to just stick in someone's face forever. Sorry, I just winced. My back is sore. But anyways, so it just helps you be all up in their face and do all the good stuff. Okay, Black Cleaver is going to be the core item to any of the Brawler builds. It just gives you that 20% cooldown reduction and the armor shred. It's going to be helping your team, especially if you have a high AD damage team, which a lot of times when you play Graves jungle, you'll get a Yasuo mid, you'll get a Vayne bottom, stuff like that. And building this early on in the game will just help your team so much in shredding down armor. And it applies like almost all the stacks in your auto, because your auto attack applies as different attacks. So whenever you're auto attacking, it applies Black Cleaver passive super fast. So it's super good on Graves kit. I just had super 7 times. All right, some situational items we have here. We have the new lethality item, Umbral Glaive. So this is better for more high EWO play when wards matter a whole lot more, where there's wards everywhere. The wards are very particular where they're at, and people actually look at them. This can be a very cheap, first or second or third item that you can get. You get the extra lethality, and then you can sweep around a bunch like that. So you'll see people build this first item even before their jungle item on the lethality build sometimes, especially in high EWO play. You might see this if people are going the lethality setup. So it's a good item, but if you're really low EWO or if you're not even level 30, anything like that, this item's not going to be super valuable to you because people don't use their wards, and then even when they do, they don't even look at them when they're sweeped. And people just play like crazy, play like maniacs. So on high EWO, that's going to be a very good item. Other than that, it's not super OP. Okay, now we have our Maw. So if they have a lot of AP threats on the enemy team, you can build Maw. It gives you cooldown reduction, all that good stuff, survivability against them. Important thing to remember is that you cannot build Phantom Dancer and Maw. So if you build this item, you cannot build Phantom Dancer. The passives do not stack. Lifelines do not stack. So just remember that whenever you're thinking about building this item. All right, we have Mercurial Scimitar. So yeah, if they have a lot of CC on the enemy team and you find yourself getting caught in it, this can be a decent last item or fourth item, something like that. Just build a Quicksilver into your build and just help you ease around. I put this on almost every single one of my builds where they can itemize this item. Okay, we have RFC. So this is mainly for the crit build. So if you're going like the full Storm Razor, Phantom Dancer, IE, and then RFC can be pretty nice because you don't have to get right up in someone's face and you have the crit set up, so it can be pretty nice for that. But that's only going to be if you're going like the main crit style build that you'll build this item. You can sometimes build it into the Brawler build, but most of the time this is really just going to be the crit setup. All right, now let's look at the Brawler full build. So the Brawler full build is the one that if you played last season, you'll remember this. Even though Graves was pretty dog last season, you'll remember this build. This has been his build for ages. So we have the Red Smite Warrior enchantment, Zerkers, Black Cleaver, which we already talked about why that's good, and then we have Double Dance and GA. So what this build will do for you, especially after you have your Phantom Dancer, it just allows you to be in someone's face and just fight them, even assassins. Like you can sit up in their face if they're an AD assassin, and you can just fight them for a very long time. Once you have the Death Stance, it makes you a pretty effective team fighter with this build because you get the armor shred on the front line. If assassins jump you in the back line, and Graves plays kind of weird, he plays like in between his front line and back line or with his front line, similar to like a Vayne or a Lucian. So you can be up in people's faces, you can do the armor shred, you can sustain forever, especially with Fleet or Conqueror. And then you have that GA at the last item just because GA is just kind of a broken item. So this build is really the setup where you can be all up in someone's face. It gives you more decisions. It gives you a little bit more leeway in your execution. So if you're not quite using your abilities super optimally, then it just allows you through just the items and the sustain built into this build just to allow you to have a little bit more freedom on how you want to play. You can dash into people, dash into tanks, stuff like that, and it just gives you a little bit more leeway. And I definitely would recommend this build if you're new to Graves. You should use this build first, and then kind of find your play style afterwards. And when you get a little bit more used to your kit, you can experiment with getting more burst setup in your build and stuff like that. But this would be the build I'd recommend for very new Graves players. And even if you've been playing Graves for a long time, this build is still pretty good. It's still pretty decent. But all right, let's talk about the Snowball Brawler build. I think this is probably the best build right now. I would think, we're in preseason right now. I think this is probably the best build for Graves at the moment, and will probably be the best build for a very long time. The lethality build is very good, and if you're looking at the background gameplay, I've seen that gameplay. The dude's going lethality build and he's popping off. The lethality build is very good, but it requires your execution will be a little bit higher, and the damage is more put into your usage of your ultimate and your Q rather than your auto attacks. But the Snowball Brawler build is mainly auto attack focused. Obviously, your abilities are going to be a big part of it, but let's just look at it real quick. So we have the Warrior Zerkers, are going to be pretty standard, but then we have our Storm Razor. After Storm Razor, it gives you a lot of upfront burst, and it's going to feel very nice. So having that item first off is going to, especially if you're snowballing, you're going to deal so much damage. As soon as you dash into someone's face, they're going to lose 1/3 of their health from your auto attack. And then you just do your full burst combo, has a lot of AD that's going to synergize with your abilities and stuff like that. And it's gonna if you're snowballing, this is gonna, if you're still playing aggressive, it's gonna give your enemy some pause. They're gonna be like, holy crap, I just took a lot of damage. And then after you add the Phantom Dancer on top of that, it's just gonna give you so much more ability to maneuver around. You're gonna crit a lot more often, so your burst combo is gonna do more. You can actually survive a little bit. And the big thing, a reason why I have Phantom Dancer right here instead of Black Cleaver or Death Stance, is because it's so cheap. Like, look how cheap it is. So if you're snowballing, you use that Storm Razor to get yourself a little bit ahead, and then you get this slightly defensive but damaging item right afterwards. It's very, very, very cheap. You could just build Black Cleaver here or Death Stance here would be okay. If you're just popping off, then fitting in a Death Stance right here might be the play. But if the game's still going at a normal pace, Phantom Dancer is just gonna help keep you on track. Then you get your Cleaver, and now you're kind of like a brawler that can fight into the team fights, that has a lot of upfront damage. And then when you finish off with your Death Stance, then you're actually really going to be a menace, being able to stick on top of people and deal a whole lot more damage. So this is a little bit higher DPS than the previous build, and is a little bit more snowballing. Once you get this, if you're already ahead and then you get your Storm Razor, you'll start really punishing people, especially if you're ahead, and then you can keep up into the team fighting phase by having these a little bit more defensive but also damage items afterwards. You can supplement part of this build and just fit in a GA instead of maybe your Cleaver or instead of your Death Stance, but Cleaver is very good for all this CDR. So you can fit in a GA somewhere in there if you want to, just kind of depending on how the game goes. All right, after that we have our burst build. So this is going to be the build I would recommend more for someone who can do the Graves combos pretty cleanly, has been playing Graves for a while. I would recommend it for this player. If you're very new to the game, I'd recommend the first build and then maybe trying out the Snowball build, and then once you've been playing for a little bit, then try out the burst build, see how it feels. This is definitely the higher execution build because it relies a lot on you hitting your abilities correctly and actually doing like the clean auto cancels that Graves does. Graves had some very weird auto cancels that we're going to talk at the end about, actually executing those auto cancels clean and getting your damage in before enemies kill you. So it's more of a difficult build to play around. So we have our Warrior Enchantment, our Zerkers, pretty standard. Something to note is you can skip your Warrior Enchantment and just go straight into lethality items. That is definitely more of an advanced thing. That's if you're going to be playing incredibly aggressive, you're going to be pushing up into the enemy's jungle, which is definitely a playstyle you can play. You're always looking for the enemy jungle to fight. You're always looking for skirmishes. You can go for that, and you can maybe just build a early Linguini blade. But that playstyle is a little bit more advanced to try to do, so we're not going to talk about that too much. So we're going to start with our Warrior Enchantment, our boots, and then our Ghost Blade is going to be our next item. So Ghost Blade, just since you're going Electrocute and you're not going your Fleet of Foot or Fleet Footwork and you're not going those movement seed items, it's really important you get this a little bit earlier into your build, and it's a very cheap item. So that's why I have it this early in the build. It just helps with your chase down so much more since you're not going to have that Fleet Footwork or anything like that. You could just build Sanguine Blade here, and that would be fine as well, especially if you're just find yourself 1v1ing a lot, or you're playing PvE and you're fighting a bunch of jungle camps, you want to take down the dragons and stuff like that really fast, then that's okay too. Really, Either of those are fine first item. Most of the time you don't want to build Duskblade first, but either Ghostblade or Sanguine Blade are going to be fine first. You don't even have to fit Sanguine Blade in your build if you want to, go the other couple items. But I would recommend going Ghostblade first, and then you can have your Sanguine Blade or Duskblade second, and then we're going to finish off with a GA. You could just add in an additional lethality item if you just really want to pop off, but by the time you get to about three lethality items, the damage drop off is going to just kind of come up. Either people are building armor or they're not. And so you can just kind of supplement, am I going to build a GA here so I can just have a little bit more survivability? I just think GA is super broken item. Gives you a get out of jail free card, because a lot of times when you're going like an assassin build, and you're the one who's carrying the game, if you mess up one time, that game might be over. And so having that GA in the late game where deaths are so important, just adding a GA into your build can just make it to where it gives you just a little bit more leeway in how you're going to be playing, and allows you to at least make one mistake. So, so lethality builds generally fall off in the late game anyways. So just adding that GA in there just makes you a little bit more, have the little bit more ability to, make a little bit mistakes, play the game normally, than just having to play the game perfectly with your full lethality build. Okay, I hope that wasn't too complicated, because we had to talk about 3 different types of play patterns. But now we're just going to talk about the abilities. So let's talk about what Graves does as a champion. So his passive is his little shotgun passive. So his passive is basically just what his auto attacks are. So what his auto attacks do is they spread into multiple bullets. If you crit, they spread into even more. The cone gets a little bit wider, so it's a cone auto attack. It does not go through minions, so whenever you're fighting people, you have to get right up on them if there's minions in the way, because if you click to auto somebody and there's minions in the way, it'll just auto the minions. It'll auto towards them, but it'll hit the minions that are in front of you. That's something that's important to recognize whenever you're going in for jungle ganks. Are there minions in front of me? If they are, then you kind of have to walk around them before you start trying to auto. And it's also something important whenever you're clearing your jungle camps. If you're trying to hit the big minion, but the little minions are in front of you, you're only going to hit the little minions. So that's something that's important. The other thing about that is your attack speed scales on your reload time, because you do have to reload in between after 2 shots. Because the shotgun, you'll fire 2 times and then you'll reload. So the big thing you just need to know about that's your reload passive. You cannot shoot through minions. You'll shoot the closest target. And if you crit, it'll give additional bullets. That's why you get additional bursts whenever you have a little bit of crit in your build, like the Phantom Dancer and stuff like that. Something else to note is your auto attacks will knock back enemy monsters and minions, so it'll actually knock them back. So it makes it where you can kite, and that knockback also takes the armor off of the scuttle crab, so it makes it a little bit easier to kill a scuttle crab. Okay, let's talk about your Q. So your Q is a projectile that goes in front of you. It's a skill shot. It goes in. You shoot it in front of you. It's a line skill shot. Whenever it gets to the end, it'll burst to the sides, and then it'll come back to you. Something that's important about that: if you shoot it into a wall, it'll almost instantly come back. It's like a 0.25 second thing. So if someone is next to a wall and you fire the Q through them, it'll hit the wall and then bounce back. It doesn't come back to you, it comes back to the location in which you fired. So if you fire at somebody, it'll go in a line, it'll burst in front of you, and then it'll come back. This is your highest damaging ability other than your ultimate, but this is like your main damage part of your kit. And there are some auto cancels that you can do with this ability, but we'll talk more about it when we do the combos at the end of the video. Okay, let's talk about your W. So your W is a smoke screen. This is a pretty OP ability, and it's important to kind of play around it. When you're new to playing Graves, it'll be kind of weird to play around this, but it's really OP. So basically what it does is you fire a smoke grenade. It's a circle projectile, and when you're practicing this, you can look at the indicator. It'll put it around the enemy champion, and it'll cause it to where they cannot see anything outside of that smoke screen. So if you are inside the smoke screen with them, they can still see you. So a lot of times, if an assassin jumps on you, you can put the smoke screen, flash away, and then you can just kill them from outside the smoke screen. Additionally, when you're going for ganks, the smoke screen will apply a slow. You can put it on top of them, and then you can apply your combo while they're in the smoke screen, and they will have no idea what's going on. It's especially effective with comboing this with your ultimate, because a lot of people dodge your ultimate. Has a noticeable cast time, and you can see the projectile moving. But if you put the smoke screen over them, they will not be able to see your burst combo. So sometimes you can lead with this ability and then do your burst combo so they will not dodge it. But you'll kind of have to play around with this a bit, because if you find somebody right in front of you, you just want to do your burst combo first, like to surprise them, and then use your smoke screen after as you're doing them, or to chase them down. So this ability is kind of weird to play around, and if you're new to Graves, it'll take a while to figure out how and when you should be using your smoke screen. But it's pretty OP. In team fights, you throw it on a carry, and it keeps them out of the fight for at least a second or two. Or you throw it on a front line, and then you can just walk past their front line, kill their carries, or you can just kill the front line. So it's a pretty OP ability. Has a very long cooldown though for that reason. All right, let's talk about your E. So your E is True Grit. So E is one of the big abilities that you're going to be playing around. I mean, you play around all of them on Graves, but this one is, you know, your get in and get out card. It's also what makes you into a kind of a tanky champion. This is why the Brawler build makes sense on Graves. Why it makes sense to have tankier items on him. Because you're so short range, and then you have this tankiness built into your kit. So whenever you do True Grit, what it'll do is it'll instantly reload one of your bullets. So instantly reload one of your bullets, so you can auto attack again. It'll also give you passive armor per stack. So the way you get stacks is by using your True Grit, and the way you will maintain your stacks is by attacking enemy monsters or enemy champions. So either monsters or enemy champions. It does not apply on minions. That's why this champion doesn't work in lane. So essentially, each stack of True Grit, you'll gain additional armor, and you can stack that up to about 8 times. So it gets pretty insane whenever you're fighting over Scuttle Crabs and you already have 4 stacks of your True Grit. At level 3, they're going to come to attack and you have 100 armor and you're facing like, you know, a Master Yi or something, and he deals 0 damage to you because you have 100 armor at level 3. So it's a big thing to, if you're able to, while you're clearing your jungle camps, to maintain True Grit stats, or in fights, use your True Grit off a cooldown whenever it makes sense to use. To maintain your stack so you can be a little bit more tanky in fights, especially if you're doing the brawl style build. You want to be all up in their face with that additional tankiness on your build. So the other thing we want to say about that, it does have an auto attack cancellation. So whenever you're clearing the jungle camp, you can cancel with it. I'll show you at the end of the video what that looks like. But using your True Grit and using your dash, I think True Grit is actually the name of the passive on it. But anyways, using your dash correctly in fights is something that takes a little bit of nuance. After you play Graves for a while, you'll know whenever you can do your burst combo. So whether you need to auto attack and then just dash in their face to cancel your auto to auto attack them again, or if you need to dash to the side or you need to dash away. Playing Graves a little bit, as you play Graves, you'll recognize when you can actually go in and do your damage combo and when you need to kind of kite the enemy. So it takes a little bit to get used to. It's probably the biggest ability that you play around because it decides how you're going to position in a fight and how you're going to actually do your combos. It goes a lot with your E. All right, let's talk about your ultimate. So what your ultimate is a line skill shot that has a slight delay whenever you cast it. So it has a slight cast time. You shoot a line skill shot in front of you. After it hits an enemy, it'll detonate into a cone, dealing a separate type of damage. It's a little bit reduced damage. It'll burst into a cone and damage an enemy is right there. Or at the end of the skill shot, it'll blow up and it'll blow out. So if you hit an enemy champion, it'll blow up right there. Into the cone right in front of you, or once it completes its range, then it will blow up in a cone in front right there. Both sides of that does damage. So if you hit him with the bullet, it does damage, and if you hit him with the cone, it does damage. The bullet does a little bit more damage than the cone does. What this will also do is this ability will also knock Graves backwards, so you can use it to reposition in a fight. I would not use it to like ult backwards so you can get in range for an auto attack, because why wouldn't you just be ulting? That'd be pretty weird, like how Caitlyn can do that sometimes. It'd be kind of silly. But you can use this to get over walls, like if you're escaping the dragon pit and they're about to come in there and kill you, and you're like, well, I gotta get out. And then you can just ult. If you're against the wall, it'll knock you over the wall. You can use that to get around. This is going to be your highest damaging ability, and I'll show you some combos to use it at the end of the game, but a lot of your combos will be, auto dash, auto Q ult, while your Q is coming back, you're ulting forward. But we'll show some of those combos at the end of the video. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is your jungle pathing. So Graves, and the cool thing about the new jungle is you can do a lot of different jungle paths, and it's fine. So Graves destroys the jungle. So you can do a full red side clear if you want to, and then go up into your blue buff, fight over the Scuttle Crab. That's a fine way to clear the jungle. You can also do a full clear if you really want to. Or you can do that first path that I talked about in reverse. You do your blue buff, and then you go down, do your full red side jungle, and then do the Scuttle Crab right there. That's fine as well. Most of the time, I'd recommend just starting where the red buff is. Just start where the red buff is. Make sure brawling super effective. But the key thing is you just want to end up at a Scuttle Crab when it spawns. Or you get a gank and then be at the Scuttle Crab when it spawns. That's the big thing around this, because Graves is so effective at fighting over Scuttle Crabs. Like we talked about, if you can get your passive stacked up on your E, when people come there, you win the 1v1s and you win the 2v2s most of the time. So big thing about playing Graves is you can play 2 different styles. You can play really aggressive, fighting over river at every opportunity, which is a very good style to play Graves. And if you're playing Graves, you should probably want to play that style. Alternatively, you can play like a power farm style and just look for ganks where they make sense, look for neutrals. that style isn't going to be super consistent. And if you're playing Graves, it's kind of just like, why are you playing Graves? If you don't want to play up in someone's face, it's just kind of like the whole thing. You beat most junglers. You beat people at river fights. You beat people over objective fights most of the time. But if you end up getting pushed into a power farm style, it is okay because Graves scales pretty decently, and he's great on 2 items. Get to your 2 items quick, and then you're pretty strong. But you shouldn't make that the basis of your playstyle. You shouldn't like base your playstyle around, I'm just going to power farm Graves every game, hope I get to late game, and I'm going to be pretty big. That shouldn't be how you base your playstyle if you're playing Graves, and especially if you're learning Graves, you should try to learn how to play a little bit more aggressive on the champion. So clear your camps when it makes sense, but you should be fighting for river control where it makes sense, pushing up into the enemy in the jungle. You can do some counter jungling Graves. Counter jungling is a little bit less efficient in this season, but when it makes sense to go in and, show them what you're made of on Graves. So if you're new to playing Graves, I think you should practice playing a little bit more aggressive than you're used to playing, fighting over the scuttle crabs. You win most of those fights. But if you get pushed into the power farming style, it's okay. But if you're just practicing, don't go for the power farming style unless you're forced into it. You should be playing aggressive and playing up on the enemy. So any kind of clear, honestly, is pretty decent. You just want to end up in the river at level 3 when the scuttle crab is going to spawn. Fight over that. Look for some 2v2s. Look for some ganks, and then power farm your jungle to catch back up. So you should be looking for a lot of fights is what I'm trying to say on Graves. All right, let's talk about mid to late game. So how to play team fights and stuff like that. No matter what build you're going for, if you're going for more of the assassin build, it does do a little bit more weird stuff. But generally, when you're playing team fights as Graves, you're in a weird spot because you're playing with your front line, but you're not a frontliner. So you're kind of like playing like Vayne or Lucian. So you're kind of up in the enemy's face, but you can still kite away. So playing in the team fights in the late game has a little bit of a nuance involved into it. So you're playing a little bit up with your front line, but you have the ability to kite backwards. You can either decide whether you need to kite backwards or push through to the enemy. Especially with the brawler build, you'll play very close to your front line, but also very close to your back line. So you can either decide, do I need to kite back in this situation like you're getting jumped on by an assassin? Let's kite back and let's just auto attack them, put our smoke screen on them. Or is it time to, go in and do your combo? Like, is it safe for me to push into the enemy? Have they used their CC abilities? Because if you just push in blindly as if you're like a Scion, then you'll just get chain CC'd by the front line and you'll die instantly. So you have to kind of play with your front line or decide if you need to play with your back line if they're getting assassinated. Because you are like a pseudo backliner, but also a pseudo frontliner. So you're just in weird positions in fights. It's very important. You can get a lot of damage off with your abilities without being directly up on top of the enemy. So if you're having to play that more kite style, that's okay to still get your damage off on the enemy's front line and their back line. You can just stay with your frontline units and fight kind of like a front-to-back fight. But what's cool about Graves is you can decide which part of it you want to be on. You just don't want to be in front of your front line. You can play right behind them, or you can play further back with your carry line. So it's very interesting the way you can do that. I would not recommend going for a lot of flanks on Graves. Unless you're going the assassin build, maybe you can find an angle, that stuff, but it's more important just to play in between your front and back line, and standard like front to back team fights is going to be how you find a lot of your success. So let's talk about some counter picks and stuff like that. Counter picks are super weird in jungle. If you watch any of my videos, I'm kind of just like, it's kind of weird. But some people who can give you a little bit of trouble would be Rammus. I brought Rammus up a lot, but you're going to have a lot of trouble killing Rammus, especially if he's snowballing. You're going to deal no damage to him, and he's going to one-combo you as soon as he has one item. So Rammus is definitely difficult to deal with as any type of AD champion. He'll literally one-shot you through CC most of the time. That champion's pretty weird. I don't want to say he's broken, but just in situations where he's good, he's good. It's pretty weird. So that champion can give you a lot of difficulty. Other champions who can get on top of you if you don't dodge her abilities, like a champion like Vi, if she lands her Q on you and she has ultimate, that can seem pretty difficult. A champion like Kha'Zix, if he goes R-Evolve, can feel pretty difficult for Graves. Other than that, a lot of control mages can feel pretty difficult that have a lot of ability to just keep you away, especially if they're really good at the champion. It can make Graves feel like, man, I just cannot get in their face. Because you don't really have all that much maneuverability. You just have that one little dash, and then if they hit you with their CC, it can be very difficult to stick on top of a control mage that has a lot of CC for you. That can feel pretty difficult. But as far as like individual jungle matchups, The only one that feels like really terrible is like fighting Aramis. Does feel pretty bad. Kha'Zix if he has R evolve. Lee Sin can be difficult if he connects his Q, but you do have the ability to outplay it. So if you outplay the Lee Sin, then you win. If you don't outplay the Lee Sin, you lose a lot of the time. So those can feel a little bit more difficult. Evelynn in the late game feels kind of difficult because you don't know where she is, and then she just shows up and one-shots you, and your True Grit doesn't help you with any of that. So those can feel a little bit difficult as well. All right, here we are in the game. So I'm going to show you guys a couple of combos real quick. So the first thing we're going to talk about is something weird going on with the Graves abilities. So something that happens with Graves abilities is you can use your ability and then auto attack, and it'll instantly auto attack. So it's like kind of reverse of an auto attack cancel, because normally you auto ability auto. But what this does is after you use your ability, it'll instantly auto attack if you have your auto attack prepped. So that'll look like I'm going to fire my Q, and then I'm going to auto attack, and I'll show you guys the other one. So look, guys. You saw how quickly I auto attacked. As soon as I cast my ability, I auto attack. It works on your W as well. Instantly auto attack. Also works on your ultimate. Autoed in my ult cast, right? So you saw how that worked. So after you use an ability, your auto attack can come instantly out. There's no like prep time for the auto. So it's kind of like a reverse of an auto cancel. You can also slightly cancel your auto attack with your E, and then the same thing will happen with your E. So this is kind of more the difficult one to do, and this is what you'll use in your jungle queen a lot. It'll look like you dash to the side. I kind of messed it up a little bit there. Let's see. Yeah, so it's a slight auto cancel, and then your auto attack will come out really fast. So neato. Cool. So now let's show a couple of burst combos. So the first combo I'm going to show you is the full burst combo. So there's a couple of versions of it, but I'm just going to show you one version of the full burst combo. So this is if you're able to actually walk up. What you're going to do is you're going to Q auto E auto ult. So it'll look something like this. So and so that's the maximum burst, but that combo won't be functional all the time. Most likely what it's going to look like is something like this. Something like, oh wait, my ult was on cooldown. What it'll most likely look like is something like this. You dash into them, auto attack Q, auto ult is what most of the time what it'll look like and what'll be more functional in game. So it's something like that. So it'll be dash in, auto Q, auto ult is what it'll look like. So one more time. Oh, my ult was on cooldown. I'm so stupid. Wow. Great video. I'm a great video maker, by the way. So yeah. That was a little bit slower because I was kind of laughing. But you get the idea. What will be the most applicable combo is you E in, auto Q, auto ultimate is what it'll look like. Cool. So a couple other things you can do is I'm going to show you a couple of the walls that you can jump. So you can jump all of the skinny walls. So like this one you can jump. Let's do this. Like that one you can jump. This one you can jump right here. This one over here you can jump. And you can also jump at this direction. You should be able to jump this wall. Oops. Let's see. I know you can somewhere. Oh, well, either way, this one's not super consistent. Nope, cannot do that one. Maybe able to do right here. Yeah, you can do that one. Let's see if you can do this one up here. I'm actually pretty curious about this one. A lot of these ones are non-applicable. That's why they're kind of like not very consistent. But the most consistent ones are going to be right there. The raptor walls, side walls right here, this wall right here, this wall right here, this wall right here, this one right here. Oh, and then the same on the opposite side. The pits you can jump over, and the pits you can jump over. You can actually jump over all of them with your ultimate as well. So you want to make sure you're facing the correct direction. Wait, hold on. There you go. Not as consistent. You'd be right next to this root or on the opposite side of the root. You can do it, but that one's not as consistent. Most of the time you'll just use your E to get back over the wall. Like that. But you can use it right there. Or the reverse. Let's see if you can do it right there. Yeah. Or the reverse. So either side of this root you can ultimate out. And on the Baron Pit is a lot easier. You can just do basically any part of it because there's no terrain blocking you there. As you may have saw before when I was doing my combo, I didn't use my W in the combo because it's not really part of your full burst, but a lot of times if you're chasing someone down, you just use your W before you ult, so they can't see your ult cast. So something like that, or something like, and then you'll ult through. Okay, cool. I don't want this video to drag out too long, so I just wanted to show you a couple of the combos and stuff like that. So at the end, your full burst combo is the first one to show you, but not super consistent. The key thing to know is canceling your auto attack. So all of your abilities will cancel your auto attack, but it's kind of a reverse. You use your ability, then you can use an auto attack while the ability's going through. And the E is the only one that's like an auto attack cancel, and then you get a quick auto afterwards. So you can auto cancel your auto with your E, and then get another quick auto off in the combo. Jeez, I don't know what's wrong with me, guys. I'm having trouble. I'm out here struggling. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching the video. It's been a pleasure making this one. This one's pretty weird, so if you guys don't like it, okay. It had way too much information and had me rambling a whole lot because I just had to go, back and forth about a bunch of different types of builds and stuff like that. So I don't know if this one was, too easy to pay attention. This might warrant, watching it a couple times or something like that. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye. Bye.